She was forced by her family to marry her sister's millionaire fiancé in Coma. Unbelievable happened. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today's story is titled, Forced to Marry Her Sister's Millionaire Fiancé in a Coma, but when he woke up, the truth shattered everything. Now, let us go back to our main character. The steady hum of hospital machines echoed through the sterile room, their rhythm the only sign that Ethan Cole was still alive. The billionaire CEO who once ruled the boardroom with a single look now lay motionless beneath white sheets, his skin pale against the glow of medical monitors. The scent of antiseptic filled the air, sharp and cold. Outside, a young woman stood frozen at the doorway. Lila Hart clutched her purse so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her dress was simple, borrowed, and a size too large. Her mother's voice whispered behind her, trembling but firm. Lila, he cannot know. No one can. Just sign the papers and this nightmare will be over. Her chest tightened. He is my sister's fiancé, Mom. How can you ask me to marry him? Because your sister cannot, and because without this marriage, the company collapses, your father loses everything, and we all end up in the streets. Do you understand? The words hit harder than the chill in the air. Lila's father was in the next ward, still recovering from a heart attack brought on by financial ruin. The Hart family's business, once modest but proud, was crumbling. The Cole family's investment was the only thing keeping them afloat, and the only condition to keep that deal alive was marriage. She stepped closer to the bed. The man before her was a stranger she had seen only in photos. Tall, dark hair, strong jawline, the kind of face that once graced magazines and Forbes lists. He looked peaceful now, too peaceful. Lila's heart pounded as the notary cleared his throat. Miss Hart, we are ready when you are. Her mother pressed the pen into her hand. Please, Lila, for your sister, for all of us. She stared at the marriage certificate. Ethan James Cole, and beneath it, the blank line waiting for her name. For a moment, her vision blurred. She could almost hear her sister's laughter echoing from the past, the night she had introduced Ethan to the family. Lila had seen the way her sister's eyes lit up when he smiled. That memory stabbed like glass. With trembling fingers, she signed, Lila Hart Cole. The pen left a thin trail of ink that sealed her fate. The notary congratulated her quietly. Cameras clicked once, twice, and the deal was done. A marriage in name only between a woman who never belonged in his world and a man trapped between life and death. As the nurses stepped out, Lila reached for Ethan's hand. It was warm, heavier than she expected. I am sorry, she whispered. You deserve your real bride, not me. No answer came, only the soft hiss of oxygen. Rain began to tap against the hospital window, slow and rhythmic. Her reflection wavered in the glass-pale face, swollen eyes, a ring too large for her finger glinting under the fluorescent light. Her mother's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It is done, she said into the receiver. The marriage is official. Then she left the room without looking back. For the first time in hours, Lila was alone. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself were judging her. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Instead, she opened her purse and took out a small notebook. On its first page, she wrote, Letter to my husband, who will never read this. Her pain moved slowly. I never wanted this, Ethan. I never wanted your money, your name, or this lie. But I will protect it for my sister's sake, until you wake up, if you ever wake up. She placed the notebook beside the bed, next to the wedding ring box the nurse had left behind. The metal glinted under the soft hospital light, cold and perfect. Outside the window, lightning flashed across the night sky, followed by the low rumble of thunder. The world moved on, indifferent to the vow she had just made. And as she turned to leave, a faint movement stirred behind her. Ethan's fingers twitched barely, but enough to make the heart monitor skip for a second. Lila froze, her breath caught, but when she looked back, he was still. The doctors would later tell her it was nothing, just a reflex. But in that fleeting second, something deep inside her whispered that this marriage, built on deception and desperation, was about to awaken a truth far greater than she could imagine. And that truth would change everything. Morning sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of the Cole mansion, a place that looked more like a museum than a home. Lila stood in the marble foyer, clutching the small suitcase that contained everything she owned. The air smelled of lavender polish and quiet money. Every step echoed, making her feel even smaller. A butler appeared, gray-haired and composed. "Mrs. Cole, this way, please." The title still sounded wrong, Mrs. Cole. Every time someone said it, her stomach twisted. He led her through a hallway lined with portraits of the Cole family. Serious men in dark suits, elegant women with pearls and cold smiles. Generations of wealth stared down at her like silent judges. When they reached the grand staircase, another voice sliced through the air. "So this is the new Mrs. Cole?" Lila turned. A woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and dressed in flawless black silk, stood at the landing. Ethan's mother. "Yes, ma'am," Lila whispered. Mrs. Cole looked her up and down. "You look nothing like her." Lila swallowed. "I know." She was radiant. "You are nervous." Her voice carried the weight of steel. "But I suppose we cannot choose the storms life gives us. Follow the rules, keep your distance, and do not embarrass this family in public. If you can manage that, we will get along." "Yes, ma'am." Without another word, Mrs. Cole turned and walked away. The butler gestured politely toward the guest wing. "Your room is prepared, ma'am. Dinner is at 7. Lila nodded and followed. The room was vast, almost the size of her entire apartment. The bed was neatly made, the linens crisp and white. Through the window, the garden stretched endlessly, blooming with roses she could never afford to touch. She sat on the edge of the bed and took a long breath. The gold band on her finger glinted under the morning light, mocking her. The world saw her as a billionaire's wife, but inside, she felt like an imposter trapped in a stranger's dream. That evening, Lila joined the family dinner for the first time. The table was long enough to seat 20, but only 4 people were there. Mrs. Cole, a few distant relatives, and Lila at the far end. The food was perfect, but every bite tasted of pressure. "So," one of the relatives began, swirling his wine, "tell us, Lila, how did you and Ethan meet?" The question hit her like a slap. Forks paused midair. Mrs. Cole's gaze sharpened. Lila forced a smile. "It was at a charity event my sister attended. I was there to help her with the arrangements. That is when I met Ethan." "A family connection," the man said, smirking. "How convenient." Her hands tightened under the table, but she kept her smile steady. "It was not convenient. It was fate, I guess." Mrs. Cole's spoon clinked against her cup. "Enough small talk. Lila has had a long day." Lila lowered her eyes, grateful for the rescue, even if it came wrapped in disdain. After dinner, she slipped away to the quiet of Ethan's study. The room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of old leather and cedar. His awards lined the shelves, reminders of the man he used to be: sharp, unstoppable, admired. She walked to his desk and touched one of the framed photos. Ethan at a charity gala, laughing beside her sister. They looked perfect together, like a picture cut from a magazine. Her throat tightened. "You loved her," she whispered. "And I am just a placeholder in her shadow." She sat at the desk, pulled out her small notebook, and began to write again. Day 2. "I moved into your house today. It feels too big, too clean. Everyone looks at me like I do not belong, and they are right. But I will take care of this place, Ethan, until you wake up. I promise." Her pen scratched softly against the paper. The act of writing steadied her. She folded the page and tucked it into the drawer, beside Ethan's watch, a sleek, silver piece that still ticked faintly, counting time for a man who could not feel it. Days turned into weeks. Lila settled into a strange routine. Mornings with Mrs. Cole were silent breakfasts filled with newspapers and judgment. Afternoons she spent at the hospital, reading aloud to Ethan. She read novels, business articles, even recipes, anything to fill the air. Sometimes, she imagined he could hear her. One afternoon, while adjusting the flowers on his bedside table, she caught her reflection in the glass. Her eyes looked softer now, less afraid. She reached for his hand, the same way she had that first night. "I do not know if you can hear me, Ethan, but I am trying my best to live in your world without breaking it." For a moment, she thought she saw his fingers move again. Her breath caught. The monitor beeped steadily, unchanged. She almost laughed at herself. "Maybe I am imagining things," she said quietly. "Or maybe you are just stubborn enough to keep me guessing." Ugh. Outside the window, the afternoon sun turned gold. spilling over the hospital bed like a gentle promise. That evening, as she left, the nurse stopped her at the door. "Mrs. Cole, I just wanted to say he seems calmer when you are here. His vitals are more stable." Lila blinked. "Really?" The nurse nodded. "Whatever you are doing, keep doing it." Walking back to the car, Lila felt something shift deep inside her chest. She did not know if it was hope or guilt, but it was real. For the first time since signing that cursed contract, she whispered to herself, "Maybe this lie is starting to feel like something true." The wind howled against the tall windows of the Cole mansion that night, shaking the rain across the glass like restless fingers. Lila stood in the hallway outside Ethan's study, holding a folder of documents she had found in one of his drawers earlier that afternoon. Inside were contracts, investment files, and an unfinished letter signed in Ethan's hand, a letter addressed to her sister. Her fingers trembled as she read the opening lines again. "I do not believe in love at first sight, but she changed that for me. When this project ends, I will ask her to marry me." Lila closed the folder slowly. The words were filled with warmth, with life proof that Ethan had loved her sister deeply. A pang of guilt tore through her. She whispered to herself, "I am living her life, wearing her ring, sleeping under her roof, and he never chose me." Downstairs, thunder rolled over the estate. The electricity flickered for a moment before stabilizing. The mansion was quiet except for the storm and the sound of her own thoughts. She could not sleep, so she drove to the hospital. The city streets were slick with rain, traffic lights blurring into red and gold streaks on the windshield. When she reached the private ward, the night nurse looked up in surprise. "Mrs. Cole, you are here late again." Lila smiled faintly. "I could not stay away." Inside the room, the soft beeping of the monitor greeted her like an old friend. She sat beside Ethan's bed, brushing damp hair from her face. His expression was unchanged, still calm, still distant. But there was something different tonight, something she could not explain. She leaned closer. "You know I found your letter?" she whispered. "The one from my sister. You loved her so much, Ethan. I wish I could tell you she is still here, waiting. But she is not. It is just me, pretending to be her." Her voice cracked. "I am sorry for everything, for lying, for existing in your story when I was never meant to be a part of it." Tears slipped down her cheeks as she took his hand, the machines beeping steady and cruelly indifferent. For a moment, she just sat there, letting silence answer her. Then, faintly, too faintly to be sure, she felt pressure against her palm. Her eyes widened. "Ethan?" The monitor jumped. Once. Twice. "Doctor!" she shouted, her chair scraping the floor. The nurse rushed in, followed by a doctor half awake from his on-call nap. The room burst into motion. "Heart rate increasing. Reflex response detected," the doctor said, eyes widening. Lila stood frozen, her heart pounding. The doctor leaned over Ethan, shining a small light into his eyes. The lids flickered, slowly, painfully. Then one eye opened only halfway, but enough. "Ethan?" she whispered again, her voice breaking. His lips moved, barely forming a sound. "Who are you?" Her knees nearly gave out. "It is me, Lila. I am your—" She hesitated. "Your wife." He blinked, confused. The monitor steadied again. The doctor looked at her. "He needs rest. We will monitor him closely. Go home for now, Mrs. Cole." "He is responding. That is what matters." But Lila could not move. She stayed beside him until dawn, her hand resting lightly over his. When the morning light touched his face, she whispered, "Welcome back." The next few days passed in a blur. News of Ethan Cole's awakening spread through the mansion and beyond. Reporters camped outside the gates, investors flooded the office with questions, and Mrs. Cole's voice grew sharper by the hour. In the middle of it all, Lila moved quietly, doing whatever she could to help. She arranged flowers for his room, kept the media at bay, and brought Ethan's favorite coffee to the hospital each morning, though he could not yet drink it. On the third morning, the doctor smiled. "He is awake, fully this time, but take it slow." Lila hesitated outside the door. She could hear his voice hoarse, unfamiliar, but alive. When she stepped in, he looked up at her. For the first time, those gray eyes that once graced magazine covers were focused, clear, and piercing. "You are my wife?" he asked again. "Yes," she said softly. "We were married while you were recovering." His brows furrowed. "I do not remember anything." "Ugh." "It is all right," she said quickly. "The doctor said memory loss is normal after trauma." He studied her in silence. "You do not look familiar." "I know," she admitted. "We did not have much time together before." Her voice trailed off. Something in her honesty seemed to calm him. His gaze softened, but confusion lingered. "You visit often?" "Every day," she whispered. "You would not be alone." He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Lila." The way he said her name, careful, deliberate, sent a strange warmth through her chest. That night, back at the mansion, Mrs. Cole entered her room without knocking. "He has woken up," she said sharply. "But do not think that changes anything. When he remembers the truth, this charade will end. Be ready." Lila met her gaze. "Maybe he deserves to decide that himself." For the first time, Mrs. Cole's eyes flickered with something almost human fear, or maybe guilt. "You have no idea what this family is capable of protecting." When the door slammed shut, Lila sank to the edge of the bed. The house felt heavier than ever, but deep inside, one fragile spark of hope began to glow. Ethan was awake, and for the first time, he had said her name. The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows of the Cole mansion as Lila adjusted the vase of lilies on the dining table. A week had passed since Ethan woke from the coma, yet everything inside the house felt like it was holding its breath. Reporters still lingered outside the gates, hungry for a glimpse of the miracle billionaire and his mysterious wife. Inside, Ethan was slowly regaining strength. Every day, physical therapists guided him through measured steps, while Lila stayed quietly in the background, bringing water, reading his schedule, or helping with the small tasks no one else noticed. He noticed. One morning, as she helped him adjust his tie before his first public appearance since the accident, their eyes met in the mirror. His reflection showed a man still pale, but alive again. "You are nervous," he said quietly. Lila's hand froze midair. "You should be the nervous one. You are the one facing the press." He managed a faint smile. "I was not talking about me." She looked away, pretending to fix his collar. "I just want everything to go smoothly. The company needs you back." He turned, studying her face. "And you? What do you need, Mrs. Cole?" She hesitated, her throat tightening. "To do what I promised. To protect what matters." Before he could ask more, Mrs. Cole entered, her voice clipped and cold. "Reporters are waiting. Lila, remember what we discussed. Keep it brief, stand beside him, and smile." "Yes, ma'am," Lila said, her composure returning. The press conference was held in the Cole Tower lobby, glass walls glinting with city light. Cameras flashed as Ethan took his seat behind the podium. Lila stood a few steps behind, her heart pounding. Ethan began speaking slowly, his voice still rough but steady. "I want to thank everyone for your prayers and patience. My recovery has been long, and I am grateful to the people who stood by me when I could not stand for myself." He glanced back at Lila, just for a second, before facing the crowd again. A reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Cole, can you confirm the rumors about your marriage during your coma? Who is your wife?" A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Lila's breath caught. Mrs. Cole's eyes narrowed like a warning blade. Ethan looked toward Lila and extended a hand. "My wife is right here." The flash of cameras was blinding. Lila stepped forward, her cheeks flushed, unsure whether to smile or run. "She took care of things when I could not," Ethan continued. "I owe her more than I can explain." A follow-up question came fast. "How did you two meet?" For a moment, silence fell. Ethan's mind searched the blank spaces where memory should have been. Lila stepped in, voice calm, but trembling. "It was not a grand love story," she said. "It was simply fate meeting circumstance. Sometimes, life writes its own contracts." The room softened, a murmur of sympathy washing through the press. Mrs. Cole's lips pressed into a thin line, but she stayed silent. That evening, back at the mansion, the atmosphere had shifted. For the first time, the staff greeted Lila with small smiles, quiet respect. She helped Ethan into the library, where a fire burned low in the hearth. He sat down carefully, watching the flames dance. "Today went better than expected," he said. She nodded. "You did well." He tilted his head, studying her again. "You are not what I imagined a corporate wife to be." "What do you imagine?" "Cold, calculating, more interested in money than meaning." She gave a small laugh. "Then you will be disappointed. I have neither the money nor the taste for calculation. He smiled faintly, then his expression softened. You wrote letters while I was in the hospital, did you not? Lila's eyes widened. How do you know that? The nurse told me. She said you wrote almost every night. She looked down. It was just a way to stay sane. I would like to read them, he said gently. Her pulse jumped. They were never meant to be read. Then maybe that is exactly why I should. The firelight flickered between them. Lila felt the walls she had built start to crumble. Maybe someday, she whispered. Days blended into a fragile peace. Ethan's recovery grew stronger, and so did the quiet rhythm they shared. Breakfast conversations turned from polite to warm. They walked in the garden, his steps steadier each morning. One evening, a storm rolled in the kind that painted the sky purple and silver. Power flickered for a moment before the generator kicked in. Ethan found her on the balcony, watching the rain fall across the dark garden. Are you always this calm during storms? He asked. Only when I have already survived worse, she said softly. He stepped closer, the rain misting through the open door. You talk like someone who carries too many secrets. She turned to face him. Maybe I do. His hand brushed hers, tentative, uncertain. Then tell me one. She looked into his eyes, the man who was supposed to belong to someone else, the man who had unknowingly changed her life. Ethan, she whispered, the truth is, I am not who you think I am. Hey. Before she could say more, thunder cracked above them, shaking the glass. The lights flickered again. Mrs. Cole's voice echoed from the hall, calling his name. Lila stepped back, her heart racing. Another time, she said quickly, before walking away into the storm's echo. Ethan watched her disappear down the corridor, a strange ache rising in his chest, an ache that had nothing to do with the scars on his body, but everything to do with the woman who had just walked away. The storm passed, leaving behind the scent of wet earth and silence heavy enough to feel. By morning, the mansion was glowing under soft gray light, but Lila's heart felt darker than ever. She had almost confessed the truth to Ethan last night, and that thought terrified her. As she poured coffee in the kitchen, Mrs. Cole appeared, elegant as always, though her voice carried the edge of thunder that still lingered in the sky. You are getting too comfortable, she said. Do not forget, this marriage exists on paper, not in reality. Lila met her eyes calmly. You mean not in your reality? Mrs. Cole's jaw tightened. My son deserves the truth before you destroy what little stability he has left. You will end this before he remembers everything. Lila set the coffee pot down with quiet determination. If you truly care about your son's stability, then let him hear the truth from me, not from gossip. Mrs. Cole's lips curved into a cold smile. You think you will be the one to tell him? Trust me, dear. When he learns who you are, he will not forgive you. Before Lila could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps ended the exchange. Ethan entered the kitchen, his cane tapping lightly against the tiled floor. He looked from one woman to the other, sensing the tension. Everything all right? He asked. Mrs. Cole's expression shifted instantly into calm grace. Of course, darling. Just a small misunderstanding about breakfast. Yeah. She left with a smile that felt like a warning. Ethan turned to Lila. What misunderstanding? Nothing important, she said quickly, forcing a small smile. Would you like some coffee? He accepted the cup and studied her face. You are pale. Did the storm keep you awake? Lila hesitated, then nodded. Something like that. He took a slow sip, eyes still on her. Last night, before the thunder interrupted us, you were going to tell me something. And her fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. It can wait. I would rather it not. His voice was gentle but firm. She shook her head, looking away. Some truths hurt more than silence. He leaned forward slightly. Maybe I am ready for the hurt. The weight of his words hung between them. Before she could answer, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and frowned. I have to go to the office. The board is demanding an emergency meeting. Lila exhaled, both relieved and anxious. Do you feel strong enough? I need to, he said simply. If I do not show up, they will eat me alive. By late afternoon, the Cole Tower buzzed with energy. The top-floor conference room was filled with board members, investors, and a dozen curious eyes. Lila stood quietly behind Ethan's chair, out of focus, but present. One of the directors spoke first, his tone clipped. Mr. Cole, the company has survived the past year under unusual circumstances. We still do not understand how your wife had authority to sign interim documents in your absence. Lila froze. She had done what she had been told by Mrs. Cole to sign small authorizations under legal proxy to keep the company stable. But now, it was being used against her. Ethan's brow furrowed. She did what? Mrs. Cole cleared her throat delicately. It was necessary at the time. Lila acted only to protect the family's interests. Another director interjected. Still, it was highly irregular. She was not your wife of record until months into your coma. The legal timeline does not add up. Murmurs filled the room. Lila's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She looked at Mrs. Cole, who stayed silent, pretending to be surprised. Ethan turned toward her slowly. Is this true? Lila's throat went dry. I can explain. He stood, the chair scraping against the floor. Then explain. The silence stretched painfully long. Finally, she whispered, Your mother arranged it. You were still in a coma. My sister was your real fiancé. She never woke up after the accident. They made me take her place so the engagement would not fall apart, so the deal would stay alive. I signed what they told me to. I am sorry. The room erupted with gasps and murmurs. Ethan's expression was unreadable. So, you are saying my wife was chosen by convenience, that you married me for business? No, she said quickly, her voice shaking. I did not marry you for money or status. I did it because I was desperate, because your mother said it would save both families. I never meant to hurt you. He looked at her for a long, unbearable moment before walking out of the room without another word. That night, Lila returned to the mansion alone. The rain had begun again, soft but relentless. She walked through the empty halls, her footsteps echoing. The servants avoided her gaze. When she reached the study, Ethan's voice stopped her. He was standing by the window, staring into the dark garden. You should have told me yourself, he said quietly. I tried, she whispered. I was afraid. He turned toward her. Afraid of what? That I would hate you? She swallowed. Yes. His voice broke slightly. You should have trusted me more than that. Tears welled in her eyes. I trusted you too much. That is why I could not bear to lose it. He closed his eyes for a moment, the anger fading into exhaustion. I do not know what to believe anymore. Lila stepped closer, her voice trembling. Then believe this. Every word I said to you, every letter I wrote, every moment by your side, it was real. The rest was a lie. But that was not. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence. Then Ethan turned away, his tone quiet but final. Go home, Lila, whatever home means to you now. She stood there for a second, her heart breaking, then walked out into the night, the mansion lights fading behind her like stars swallowed by storm clouds. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air around the Cole estate felt heavier than before. Lila had left the night before, taking nothing but her notebook and a few clothes in a paper bag. The mansion, once filled with her quiet presence, now felt colder, emptier. Ethan stood by the same window where he had told her to go. He had not slept. The world outside glistened with rainwater, the garden still dripping from the storm. His reflection stared back at him, a man torn between logic and the ache of something he could not name. He turned when Mrs. Cole entered. She looked immaculate as always, her posture sharp, her tone careful. She is gone, she said simply. I know. She was never supposed to be here, Ethan. What happened was unfortunate, but necessary. You must move forward. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Necessary or convenient? Mrs. Cole stiffened. Everything I did was to protect you, and this company. That girl's deception was your plan, he interrupted. You orchestrated all of it, did you not? Her silence confirmed it. He let out a bitter laugh. So, all that time I thought she was lying to me? You were lying to both of us. She was never your equal, his mother replied sharply. You owe her nothing. Ethan turned away, gripping the edge of the desk. You are wrong. I owe her everything. She kept this house from falling apart when you were too busy protecting your image. Mrs. Cole's voice softened, almost pleading. You cannot let emotion ruin your judgment. But Ethan was already walking out of the room. Emotion is the only reason I am still human. Across town, Lila was sitting in a small apartment above a bakery, the kind that smelled like fresh bread and second chances. The rent was cheap, the wallpaper peeling, but for the first time in months, she could breathe. She found work at a local community art center, teaching sketching classes to children. Her hands moved easily across the paper, But her mind wandered off into the hospital rooms, the quiet nights by Ethan's side, the way he had looked at her before everything fell apart. When class ended, she packed her things and pulled out her notebook. The pages were full of unfinished letters, words she would never send. On the newest page, she wrote, "I do not expect forgiveness. I only hope you are well. Maybe that is enough for me." As she closed the book, a shadow fell across the doorway. She looked up and froze. Ethan stood there, leaning lightly on his cane, rain still clinging to his coat. "Your students told me I might find you here," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He stepped closer, eyes steady. "Looking for answers I did not have the courage to hear before." She swallowed hard, trying to find words. "You should not be here. Your family—" "My family has been running my life long enough," he interrupted. "Now it is my turn." Lila looked down at her hands. "Everything I said before was true. I did not marry you for money, Ethan. I never wanted your name, only peace for my family." He nodded slowly. "I know. I went through the company records, the contracts. I saw how much you risked to keep things stable. You signed documents that saved thousands of jobs. You did not steal anything. You saved everything." Her voice broke. "It does not change what I did to you." "Maybe not," he said softly, "but it changes how I see you." They walked outside together. The late afternoon light painted the street gold, the air warm and still. For a while they said nothing. Then Ethan stopped, turning to face her. "I read your letters," he said. Her eyes widened. "You found them?" "They were in the drawer of my study," he said. "You wrote about nights you could not sleep, about how you were afraid of being discovered, about how you hoped I would wake up someday. You said you did not deserve forgiveness." "Ugh." Lila's throat tightened. "Because I do not." He stepped closer. "You were wrong. Those letters were not lies. They were the truest thing I have ever read." Tears filled her eyes. "I never thought you would read them. Maybe I was meant to." He took her hand gently. "Do you know what I realized after you left? That this house, the money, the company, all of it felt meaningless without someone who actually saw me. You did, even when I was nothing but a name on a hospital chart." Lila shook her head, tears spilling over. "You are not supposed to forgive me this easily." "I am not forgiving you," he said with a faint smile. "I am asking for something else." Her heart stilled. "What?" He exhaled slowly. "A chance to start over. Not as a contract, not as a lie, as two people who survived something impossible." Lila's hands trembled in his. "And what if I say no? Then I will thank you for teaching me what honesty looks like," he said softly. "But if you say yes, maybe we both get to breathe again." She looked at him for a long moment, the golden light reflected in his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Then yes." A small smile curved his lips, tired, fragile, but real. As they stood beneath the fading sunlight, the world around them seemed to quiet. No contracts, no cameras, no expectations, only the sound of two hearts finally keeping the same rhythm. For the first time, it was not about duty or guilt. It was about choice. And this time, both of them were finally free to make it. The following week felt like a quiet dawn after a long storm. Ethan kept his word. He stepped away from the mansion and spent his days rebuilding the company with calm, deliberate focus. But every evening, he found himself back at the small art center where Lila taught. Sometimes, he brought coffee. Sometimes, he only sat in the back row and watched her laugh with her students. It became their new rhythm, soft, ordinary, and strangely peaceful. Yet beneath that peace, another storm was brewing. One afternoon, as Lila packed up her supplies, the door burst open. Mrs. Cole stood there, her heels clicking against the old wooden floor. Her expression was cold, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. "So this is where you have been hiding," she said. Lila straightened, calm but firm. "I am not hiding, Mrs. Cole. I am living." You think you can just erase everything? The scandal, the deception?" Lila's voice was steady. "I am not trying to erase it. I am trying to move forward." Mrs. Cole stepped closer. "You will destroy him if you stay. The board already doubts his leadership. If they see him with you again, he will lose everything." Before Lila could answer, Ethan's voice came from the doorway. "Then let them see." Mrs. Cole turned, startled. Ethan stood there, no longer the recovering patient, but the man who had built an empire. His cane was gone. His voice was strong. "Mother," he said quietly, You taught me to protect what matters most. But somewhere along the way, we started protecting the wrong things. Her jaw tightened. You are making a mistake. No, he said, taking Lila's hand. I am finally correcting one. Mrs. Cole's gaze flickered between them. And what will people say? Ethan's answer was calm, almost gentle. They will say I married for love. Something you always said was a weakness. I finally disagree. For the first time, Mrs. Cole's mask cracked. She looked at her son, the boy she once shielded from failure, and the woman beside him who refused to bow. Without another word, she turned and left, the sound of her heels fading down the hall. Silence filled the room. Lila exhaled shakily. You should not have done that. She will never forgive you. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe she will not, but I am done living for forgiveness. He turned to her, his eyes softening. You once said you did not belong in my world. Maybe my world needed changing. Lila's breath caught. Ethan, he reached into his pocket and held up something small, a familiar silver ring. This time, no contracts, no lies, just truth. Her eyes filled with tears as he slid the ring into her palm. I do not want you to promise forever, she whispered. Just promise honesty. He nodded. That I can keep. Oh. Outside, the last light of the day spilled through the windows, painting them both in gold. In that moment, the past finally stopped chasing them. And as their hands intertwined, Lila realized that the story that began as a forced marriage had quietly turned into something neither of them planned. Something real, fragile, and alive. It was not a perfect ending, but for the first time it was theirs. A few weeks later, the city buzzed with whispers again, but this time it was different. The headlines no longer called it a scandal. They called it a story of redemption. The CEO who chose truth over power. Ethan had faced the board, admitted every manipulation his family had made, and publicly cleared Lila's name. The press expected humiliation. Instead, they found humility, and that was harder to attack. The board voted to keep him as CEO. The investors returned. For the first time in years, the Cole name meant integrity, not fear. That evening, after the press conference, Ethan found Lila waiting for him in the empty lobby of the Cole Tower. She stood near the glass wall, city lights flickering across her reflection. You looked calm up there, she said softly. He smiled faintly. I was terrified. But it felt good to finally tell the truth. She nodded. It always does. He studied her for a long moment. I meant what I said today. You do not owe this company, or me, anything. Head. Lila looked at him, her voice steady but tender. And you do not owe me forgiveness. But I still believe in you, Ethan. I always did. He took a slow step closer. Then maybe we start from there. The following days unfolded quietly, filled with small gestures that spoke louder than any declaration. Ethan visited the art center, not as the powerful CEO, but as a volunteer helping Lila paint sets for a community fundraiser. They laughed when he accidentally splashed paint on his shirt and she teased, You finally look human. He smiled, brushing his hand across her cheek, leaving a faint streak of blue paint. Then I am finally learning. Oh. The fundraiser was held in a renovated warehouse, transformed with twinkle lights and children's artwork. As the event began, people gathered around the stage, unaware that one of the most influential men in the city was quietly serving lemonade at the back. When the auction started, the final piece displayed was one of Lila's own paintings, a sunrise over water, titled Second Chances. The audience applauded, and Ethan stepped forward, raising his hand. $100,000, he said simply. Lila's eyes widened. Ethan, you cannot... He smiled. I can, but you will not take the money. It goes to the center. The crowd erupted in applause, and for a brief moment, Lila saw the man behind the headlines, not the billionaire, not the heir, but the person who had fought to make right what was wrong. Later that night, as the lights dimmed and the guests left, Ethan found Lila standing under the soft glow of the string lights. Do you remember what you wrote in your letters? He asked. Her voice trembled. Which part? The one where you said you hoped I would wake up and remember who I was. Lila smiled faintly. I remember. He stepped closer, his voice low and sure. I did wake up, Lila, but it was you who reminded me who I wanted to be. For a long moment, they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of laughter and light, the city humming quietly outside. Then he took her hand. Come home, he said softly. She looked up, her eyes glistening. "Where is that?" He smiled. "Anywhere you are." And under the warm lights, she let him pull her close, her heart steady against his. The world outside still buzzed with chaos and power, but in that small, quiet space, they had finally found what neither wealth nor status could buy: peace. This time, their love was not hidden behind contracts or lies. It was written in truth, in forgiveness, and in every heartbeat that dared to begin again. A year later, the Cole Foundation's annual gala shimmered under the chandeliers of the renovated City Hall. The event was not about profit or power anymore. It was about rebuilding, giving back, and honoring the people who had stood behind the truth when it mattered most. Ethan stood at the podium, dressed simply in a black suit. The crowd before him was full of investors, volunteers, and families from the Arts Center. Cameras flashed, but his eyes were searching for only one person. When he found her, standing near the back in a soft blue dress splattered faintly with paint, he smiled. Lila had never changed herself to fit into his world. Instead, she had changed what his world meant. He took a breath and spoke. "A year ago, I almost lost everything. But sometimes losing what you think you need is the only way to find what truly matters. Tonight, this foundation stands not for wealth, but for second chances and for the courage to start again." Applause filled the hall. Lila felt her throat tighten, not because of the words, but because she knew they were real. When the speeches ended, Ethan stepped down from the stage. The orchestra began to play softly. He walked through the crowd and stopped in front of her, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "Lila Hart Cole," he said, using her full name for the first time. "You once promised to stand beside me until I woke up. You kept that promise. Now it is my turn." Her lips curved into a small, trembling smile. "You already did, Ethan." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a simple gold ring, the same one she had worn the night of their paper marriage. "Do you remember this?" Her eyes softened. "How could I forget?" He took her hand gently. "Last time, this ring meant obligation. Tonight, I want it to mean choice." The music swelled as he slipped it onto her finger once more. The crowd turned, whispers rippling like wind through silk. But this time there was no scandal, no shame, only joy. "I am not asking you for forever," he said quietly, "just for honesty, for partnership, for a life built on what we have survived." Tears welled in her eyes. "Then yes," she whispered, again and always yes. The room erupted in applause as they embraced, but the world around them faded away. It did not matter if the cameras caught every second. What mattered was the peace in their hearts, the promise reborn not from wealth or fear, but from truth. Later that night, long after the guests had left, they stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered, the same city where their story had begun in pain and deception. Lila leaned into him and said softly, "Do you ever think about how it all started?" Ethan smiled. "Every day, but I would not change a single moment, because every wrong turn still led me to you." She rested her head against his shoulder, the golden lights reflecting in her eyes. Once, they had been strangers bound by lies. Now, they were partners bound by choice. And as the city lights flickered below them, Lila whispered, almost to herself, "From a forced beginning to a chosen ending. That is what love really means." Ethan's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining under the quiet stars. This time, the story was not about survival. It was about peace, redemption, and a love that finally became real.